Good morning. Today we'll discuss the various themes of Emily Dickinson's poetry. First and the foremost theme that Dickinson uses is death in her poetry. No two poems have exactly the same understanding of death, and death is sometimes gentle, sometimes menacing, sometimes simply inevitable. In the poem I Heard a Fly Buzz, Dickinson investigates the physical process of dying. She personifies death and presents the process of dying as a simple realization that there is eternal life. In Behind me dips eternity, death is the normal state, life is but an interruption. In the poem My Life Had Stood Like a Loaded Gun, the existence of death allows for the existence of life. So, death is the moment where the speaker can cash their check of good behavior for their eternal rewards. All of these varied pictures of death, however, do not truly contradict each other. Death is the ultimate unknowable, and so Dickinson circles around it, painting portraits of each of its many facets as a way to come as close to knowing it as she can. Truth and its tenuous nature. Dickinson is fascinated and obsessed with the idea of truth, and with finding it in her poems, she knows that this is close to impossible. This is reflected in how she deals with all of her other themes. Her poems come back to these central themes again and again, but they are never treated in exactly the same way in all the poems. She discovers the new sides to each of them, comes to them from new angles, tries to relate in new ways, and by investigating each theme again and again in seemingly contradictory manner, she is finding the truth in her circuits, means around her. Dickinson also clearly shows that truth is found more easily in negative or painful emotions. In I Like a Look of Agony, she shows how she can only trust people who are dying because that is the only thing that cannot be faked. Her own grief and others is powerful to her because while it may not be pleasant, she has found something honest. And this drives her poetry. The experience of these painful emotions allows her to represent them faithfully and bring out or write honest poetry. Fame and success. Dickinson wrote many poems dealing with fame and success. These poems almost always explain or elucidate the negative sides of these ostensibly positive things. In poem I Am Nobody, Who Are You? To gain fame, one must advertise oneself, use one's own name and identity as marketing tools. This fame is made meaningless by the fact that its audience is an unthinking bog. Success is counted sweetest does not present quite so wholly negative vision of fame and success. Success here, however, is dangerous, for it takes away the speaker's ability to appreciate that success. This represents a general lessening of the successful person's emotional area, and if this success is in the field of poetry, that will certainly lead to weaker poems in the future. So, this focus on the negative side of fame and success makes it seem like Dickinson did not want them for herself, that she was happier unpublished and unknown. This is belied, however, by the simple fact that she wrote about them so frequently. She may have known very well the dangers of fame and success, but clearly still found fame and success enticing and fascinating. Grief. So, grief is virtually omnipresent in Dickinson's all the poems. Other characters are few and far between these poems, but grief is practically Dickinson's primary companion. When other people do appear, it is often only grief that allows Dickinson to feel connected to them. She only trusts people who display a look of agony because it is the only emotion, according to her, that shows or that she knows must be true. Therefore, it is only with the dead and dying that Dickinson's wall of distrust collapses. Dickinson also shows another positive side of grief. It gives her strength. In I Can Wade Grief, she makes it clear that happiness only intoxicates her, makes her stumble and ostensibly lose her great perceptive abilities. Grief, on the other hand, emboldens her, makes her able to face anything, and gives her the strength and perspective to write the poetry that she wants. Faith. Dickinson's poetry is highly interested in faith, in God, in religion. The fact that she so often wrote in traditional religious hymn manner or style stanza emphasizes this fact. God is essential to her, yet she is unwilling to just accept the traditional dogmatic or dogmas, and so explores other possibilities for faith in her poetry. Just like while she follows stanza form, she breaks conventions of rhyme and punctuation. Often many of her poems about nature seem to be the most religious. There is a certain slant of light presents this light as almost a divine vision, and shows how nature can be very closely tied to God, yet can only distance the reader from him. Her poems never claim to any understanding of the divine. However, she is most certain that God is inscrutable. Indeed, it is only her relationship to him that she can fully investigate. In many of her poems in which there is another figure besides the speaker, it is often unclear whether this is the figure of God or a lover, and these poems can often be read either way. This explains the profound closeness with God that Dickinson searched for. Freedom through poetry. So, poetry in Dickinson's poem is an expansive, greatly liberating force. The society tries to limit the speaker to the acceptable female roles, shutting her in closets or in prose to prevent her from expressing herself. These limitations only inspire her further and fuel her to write her poetry. So, this shows that she was writing in a time when there were controls over female roles. So, she feels that these things they cannot limit, no matter how they try, for poetry is limitless, as she shows us in I Dwell in Possibility. It is a house with no roof but the sky. This metaphor of poetry as house also allows Dickinson to transform what oppresses her, those female tasks of running the household, into a setting for what frees her, that is poetry. This metaphor also allows Dickinson to take possession of poetry as solely a male vocation in the realm of politics and wars, but also a female vocation situated in the house and garden. Intensity of emotion in her poems. Dickinson's poetry exhibits a profound intensity of emotions, and her poems also focus on this as a subject, knowing or trying to understand the virtues of such intensity. She shows that only the most intense emotions can be trusted, can be exhibited for others with honesty, and therefore only the most intense emotions belong in poetry. Dare You See a Soul at the White Heat shows, however, that while positive, this level of emotional intensity is neither easy to produce and experience, nor is it easy to observe. In this poem, the speaker must enact a painful forging process to refine her emotions to this heightened level, and while it is glorious, almost divine when she does, it is still a challenging thing for the reader to observe. The first day's night had come shows just how dangerous such intensity of emotion can be, why the reader must dare to witness it. In this poem, the speaker's emotions are so overpowering that she cannot maintain a whole incorporated identity and she loses her mind. Therefore, while most of Dickinson's poems extol the honesty in heightened emotions, we see that there is a risk in all of this. So, we see that all these things or all these points that we have discussed in this topic of ours, we can see that Dickinson has used all of these in her poems. All these points or these themes can be seen somewhere or other in her poems. Thank you.